92.5 WGHQ. Great songs, magic memories.
I gave a girl a ride in the wagon. She crawled in and took control. She was tired, 'cause her mind was a dragging. I said, get some sleep and dream of rock and roll. 'Cause like a princess she was laying there, moonlight dancing off her hair. She woke up and took me by the hand. She's gonna love me in my Chevy van, and that's alright with me. Her young face was like that of an angel. Her long legs were tan and brown. Better keep your eyes on the road, son. Better slow this vehicle down. 'Cause like a princess she was laying there, moonlight dancing off her hair. She woke up and took me by the hand. She's gonna love me in my Chevy van, and that's alright with me. In a town that was so small, you could throw a rock from end to end. A dirt road main street, she walked off in bare feet. It's a shame I won't be passing through again. 'Cause like a princess she was laying there, moonlight dancing off her hair. She woke up and took me by the hand. We made love in my Chevy van, and that's alright with me. 'Cause like a princess she was laying there, moonlight dancing off her hair. She woke up and took me by the hand. We made love in my Chevy van, and that's alright with me. 'Cause like a princess she was laying there, moonlight dancing off her hair. She woke up and took me by the
This is the Hudson Valley station for great songs and magic memories. 920 WGHQ AM Kingston and 92.5 W223 CR FM Kingston, New York. We're streaming through our website, WGHQ.FM, and you can listen on your smart speaker when you say play WGHQ. This is Magic 92.5 WGHQ with another hour of great songs and magic memories. Starting right now.
What I want, you've got, and it might be hard to handle. But like a flame that burns a candle, the candle feeds the flame. Yeah, yeah, what I got, full stock of thoughts and dreams that scatter. When you pull them all together,
Jude Children's Research Hospital. Find out how you...
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM. And also online at mykcr.org.
Hi, I'm Steve Thomas for Habitat for Humanity Restore. Habitat Restores are nonprofit home improvement stores and donation centers that sell new and gently used furniture, building materials, and appliances to the public at a fraction of the retail cost. The Ulster County Restore at 406 Route 28 in Kingston needs your donations. Call our hotline at 845-853-7499 to schedule your free pickup. And thanks.
We all play a role in keeping our community safe.
Every day, we move in and out of each other's busy lives.
It's easy to take for granted all the little moments that make up our everyday.
Some are good, others not so much.
But that's life.
It's when something doesn't seem quite right
that it's time to pay attention.
Because only you know what's not supposed to be in your everyday.
So protect your everyday.
If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
Hi, this is Jared Mans from the Spring Lake Fire Department, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This programming is brought to you by the Friends of Kevin Cahill. As a strong advocate of local broadcasting, Assemblymember Cahill urges you to support Kingston Community Radio with your time and donations. Your contributions keep KCR vital and on the air at FM 92.5, AM 920, and on the web at mykcr.org. Please join Assemblymember Cahill and send your gifts of $10, $25, or more to Kingston Community Radio, Post Office Box 4364, Kingston, New York 12402. Together, let's keep KCR alive.
We're here. All right, we're back.
Jeez. Thank you, Lawrence, and good morning, listeners. 331-9255 is our call-in number here on this beautiful Wednesday morning. Fred Costello alongside of me, Supervisor Town of Saugerties.
Good morning, Greg. Good morning, Lawrence. And it is a beautiful day.
Good morning, guys.
It is beautiful. When you know I just have short sleeves on and not a pullover. Well, I can't wear a pullover.
You're going to struggle with a pullover.
So it's either a long sleeve button down or a short sleeve button down. And it's going to be another beautiful day.
Yeah, it's the air is so calm. There's no breeze, wind, nothing. It's amazing.
Very, very, very nice. So 331-9255 is our call-in number. We'd love to hear from you. Talk about whatever you would like. If you have any questions, any concerns, obviously today's the day in New York State where masks are not mandated.
If you're vaccinated, you no longer have to wear a mask indoors.
Now, some businesses are still going to opt for masks, for their employees to wear a mask and for their patrons to wear masks. Stewart's is my regular stop on a Wednesday morning for the coffee, and they have their signs down. They're not requiring masks, at least at the store on Main Street, but I imagine that was something Stewart's instituted store-wide.
I imagine that.
I don't think each location decided upon. The employee that was working, he did have a mask on. A couple people walked in with masks. I put my mask on because I just wasn't
curious.
I wasn't 100% sure,
Mm-hmm.
what it was. But the majority going in and out did not have masks.
This relief of the mandate is for people who have been vaccinated. I think the challenge for everyone is going to be how do we confirm that people are vaccinated? We're kind of it's on the honor system. So I suspect there's going to be people who say they're vaccinated. They may not be, but we're there's an opportunity here to protect ourselves. There's plenty of vaccine right now. You basically could do it as a walk-in basis, and for folks that want to get vaccinated, those opportunities and occasions are abundant and available.
And as I have said probably over the last couple of months or so, I think you're going to see where large venue events with thousands of people are going to require a vaccination to get admittance into the event, into the venue. Currently, Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, you need to be fully vaccinated or show a COVID-19
card
recent within 5 days, or a medical exemption, because there are some people that have rare forms of blood disorder that apparently cannot receive the vaccine. So there's going to be challenges with it, but much better place today than we were, say, back around the holidays and.
Oh my God, yeah.
Certainly a year ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, a year ago we were in the thick of this.
Yeah.
We were rapidly closing things down and coming up with protocols, and it's hard to believe it was a year ago. It feels like a lot longer.
It does. And I've said this also, that back in the end of March, April, if people knew that this was going to drag on for over a year, I don't know how many people could have taken that. There was that optimism that, okay, when summer comes, numbers would go down, and the numbers did go down. But then, of course, the holidays came and the travel came, and the numbers went skyrocketed.
Yep.
So we're just going to have to, it's like anything. It's never a cut and dry case. There's going to be challenges, and going to be interesting to see as we move forth. The Garlic Festival, and of course that's the 1st of October, so that's several months away. But are they going to take a stance where, in order to get admittance into the Garlic Festival, you need to be fully vaccinated, especially if they're going to go at 100%?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just such a difficult thing. There's some concern about HIPAA violations and asking those questions. Excuse me, and we will see. Some of the sporting stadiums did something I thought was interesting. They created areas where folks were vaccinated and allowed different densities there than other parts of the stadium where people were not vaccinated, where they had to maintain social distance, which I thought was an interesting way to go.
That was an interesting concept. Obviously, you're still not selling all the potential seats. I mean, let's see, about a month ago, friends of mine went down to Yankee Stadium. The game was sold out, 11,000 people.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Because
can you imagine sitting in Yankee Stadium with only 11,000
No,
people?
you would think you're at the end of a season where they won 30 games.
Yeah.
It wouldn't feel right.
No.
There's I don't know that, and there's a synergy and an energy about going to an event like that, where it's busy and it's crowded. That's kind of part of the experience.
Sure.
So
I mean, just like a football game, just like a Giants game. To go into, I could just picture going into the Meadowlands with 11,000 people sitting in a $78,000 stadium or 78,000 capacity stadium.
Yeah, it would feel wrong. You would think something catastrophic happened.
I think it would feel eerie.
I agree. It would feel like the apocalypse happened and you're a lone survivor.
Well, get your coffee.
But yeah, so good news though. I think, we are turning the page on this. There's a lot of outstanding things pending. We certainly, the pandemic's not over. We see it especially in other places in the world where they're in their flu season and COVID is having a dramatic impact on their opportunities to have a normal life. But I kind of like where we are, and I think the worst of it certainly is behind us. And if people keep continuing to get vaccinated, I think by fall we'll be in a pretty safe spot where we can finally put this away. And businesses now, I think, are starting to experience trends that are more in line with what their normal expectations are. And I even saw a report where the futures pricing on lumber had stabilized, at least for a few days. That's a good indicator too, because the housing is booming, but there's 20 and 30% premiums just to buy materials. And copper, a roll of copper wire was $140.
Can you imagine?
No.
Can you imagine?
Could not imagine that. I remember when I first became aware of that, it would be $30-$40. And then it did spike, and it hovered around 100 for a very long time. But, it's up to 140, and that's if you can get it.
If you can get it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the thing, if you can get it. And that's the other thing, trying to get supplies and parts is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to stabilize also. It's got to. I
was reading reports this morning about the semiconductor shortage. There seems to be indications that that's starting to stabilize. It's a small world. We like to think we live where we are, and the bubble that we live in is the center of the universe, but it's not the case at all.
Oh, no.
Looking back over this year, the disruption to the supply chains have influenced prices, have influenced availability in so many ways that we just couldn't have anticipated. And that cargo ship a month ago, there's still disruptions in the supply chains as a result of that are impacting the consumer market, which is pretty amazing itself.
Yeah, and of course, some of the stuff that occurs, they easily will jump to that to use as an excuse. First it was the Suez Canal, the barge getting stuck, and then the pipeline. But now gas has seemed to come down a couple of cents. The couple stations that I've noticed was up over this past weekend up to Sagandaga, and up there the gas was $3.15, $3.18 a gallon.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, as they're heading into their tourist season, that's not a good thing. That
of
pipeline, though, aren't you curious about what really happened there? Because, our IT folks in the town, not that we're immune to this, have kind of made us think about that over and over and over again. And we've taken precautions. We've migrated our storage stuff away from the centralized system that's at Town Hall. And now there's a virtual version of that running on a delay on the web someplace. So, in the event of something catastrophic, the belief is we could spin up those virtual servers and restore.
Right.
And kind of protects us from this type of what do they call it? Ransomware?
Yeah.
Ransom attack.
Ransom attack.
And for an organization that critical to our economy, not to have those protocols in place, or unless all those protocols just failed, it's unsettling.
Well, that's going to be interesting to see, because I'm sure there's going to be a thorough investigation in there, because there had to be protocols. There had to be measures in place. Yeah, something that critical. I mean, like you said, look what we've done just in Sorgeties, and you compare that with the pipeline that runs from Texas to Jersey.
Right, we think it's very important, but nobody would even think twice if
you're comparing a grape to a pumpkin.
Mm-hmm. I like that analogy.
So we flip up the subject here. Most of the school budgets passed.
Sorgeties passed. I didn't see that. Sorgeties
passed overwhelmingly, 2650 to about 1144. I think it was about 65%.
Congratulations to them.
Kingston passed most of the school districts. Their budgets passed.
Interesting. That's there's always an underlying trend that kind of, when they all pass, it seems like they all pass, and when there's challenges, there's a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
And then there's the rare occasion where there's a capital project or some effort to either add curriculum or restore curriculum that motivates individual districts. But it's interesting to look at the trends. They kind of define these cycles.
Kirk Reinhardt and his team they did an exceptional job keeping the budget below 1%, and selling it, educating the public, just like they did with the capital project.
Capital project, yep.
And to have that pass by the number that it did back in, what was it, early December?
It was December, yeah.
Yeah, right before the holidays. Here again is a credit to Kirk and his team.
Staff, yeah.
For what they put together.
They really get it, though. They're out there in the community trying to create opportunities for communication and have people resolve their questions in advance, and I think that's reflected. Getting a capital project passed is no small undertaking. It's difficult to do. And, the way they went about the one that they just did was thoughtful in the sense that it kind of was tax neutral, and they identified and made the case for the improvements that are needed. And it's hard to argue when roofs and bathrooms need to be replaced. We all know, being homeowners, that we have to do that every so often.
Yeah, and I think people that take the time and just, to realize what is the impact of not doing the work, and having a scenario where a roof is leaking, that causes, and every time it rains, there's going to be interior damage.
That's devastating to a building, too.
Sure. There's been a scenario where a basketball court in a gymnasium buckled because
there's so much moisture in the floor.
Because the roof leaked for such an extended time.
Wow, that had to be happening for a bit. And a lot. It wasn't just a drip. That had to be a substantial leak. But those things happen, and
you can't overlook.
No.
It's like with anything, you have to spend the money for maintenance, and maintenance is ongoing. Nobody's going to give an argument that you don't need to do maintenance on anything. This whole trend with schools and other facilities spending $1 million+ with putting in synthetic turf, with the mindset that there's no maintenance.
But that's not entirely true, right?
No, there is maintenance. There's brushing that has to get done. There's cleaning. There's sanitizing. If a student gets a cut and bleeds, that stuff has to get removed. Soda gets spilled, et cetera.
Is that still a trend, though, that there's movement towards artificial surface?
No, that's been kind of cut back a little bit. And then also and I don't know if that moratorium is still in place that state education put on, because a study came out that in the crumb rubber that was used, the percentage of ground up metals that were in the crumb rubber.
Really?
Yeah.
So did the metals cause staining on the surface, or was it a health risk?
I think it was more of a health risk. And then, those surfaces, they can reach 140, 150 degrees very, very easily in the summertime, when maybe your ambient air temperature is only 85 or 90, just beating in the sun.
The UV rays actually heat the synthetic surface.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like natural grass. You shoot with an infrared gun grass on a 90-degree day, and then shoot dirt or an area that's not doesn't have a dense canopy of grass. It's considerable. Mm-hmm. It's considerable. Well, we got two announcements. You want to
we'll
grab one of them, and I'll grab one?
Yep. The Kingston Manicure and Damacure is having Spitzel lunch on Saturday, June 5th, 2021. The pickup location will be the Manicure and Damacure Hall at 37 Greenkill Avenue. Pickup times will begin at noon through 1:30. Pre-orders by Monday, May 31st. And the menu includes cheese speckle, tossed salad, fruit cup, dessert, and it's all for $12.50. Enjoy the music of Joe Unger while picking up your lunch. There will be limited outside seating, weather permitting. They'll accept checks, credit cards, and cash at the door. Walk-ins after 12:30 while supplies last.
Okay, that's something they do on an
Yep.
annual basis. So this is National Bike Month, and there's some events taking place in Kingston actually today, Wednesday the 19th. Between 3 and 5 p.m., this takes place at the Y parking lot on Pine Grove Avenue at the YMCA. Pine Grove Avenue. Between 3 and 5 p.m., a free bike repair clinic. Volunteer mechanics will help get your bike in working order and safe to ride. You can get bells, lights, and bike helmets at the clinic. No advance registration required. Be sure to bring your bike and wear a mask or other face covering when you come. 6 p.m. will be a presentation on New York State bike laws by attorneys at O'Connor and Partners. as part of the Kingston Women's Bike Festival. They'll give key information on the rules of the road, your rights if you are injured while riding, and what to expect if you end up in litigation. A Q&A session will then follow. 7 p.m. is the start of the International Ride of Silence. This event, held since 2003, took place in 458 locations worldwide last year to honor cyclists who have been killed or injured while cycling on public roads. Our Kingston Ride will be led by Rose Quinn and Tom Polk. The festival has a range of amazing events throughout May with information on the website. And for more information on the repair clinic today, contact the YMCA Bicycle Program Manager, Tom Polk. You can reach him at 845-338-3810, extension 102. You may also email him at tpolk@ymcaulster.org. So that's tpolk@ymcaulster.org. More information about the Kingston Women's Bike Festival, contact Festival Director Rose Quinn. Telephone number 845-266-6096, or you may email to rquinn, that's RQUINN, at sunyulster.edu. And again, that's taking place today at the YMCA off Pine Grove Avenue.
Right. It's good to see these starting to show up, too, because it's another indication that we're moving on.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, 331-9255 is our call-in number for those listeners up at this early hour for some, not so early hour for others. 331-9255. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call. Maybe you have some feelings about wearing face masks, etc. Love to hear from you.
Give us a call. It is a call-in platform, and our shows are better when you call in. Greg and I could be long-winded from time to time.
You think?
Once in a while. So, but some exciting things. 4th of July preparations are underway, and I don't think there's been an official announcement, but it appears that the parade is going to happen. It will be on Sunday, and there will be a 2-hour delay in its start to be considered for folks that may be going to church on Sunday morning. The parade is proposed to start at 1 o'clock, and we've gotten our applications for folks that want to participate. There will also be a Stallions game, and that will be followed by a fireworks display sponsored by the Saugerties Lions Club.
Yes.
So
Al Carney was on the phone with me yesterday, in fact, and they're moving forth with the fireworks display. And I think that was a good move by the Saugerties Fire Department and the Village of Saugerties to hold the parade on the 4th of July. The 4th, rather than going that holiday, Monday the 5th. And there had been some talk about that because of the churches. But I actually think a 1 o'clock step off is makes for a nice day.
I agree.
And again, ample time for backyard picnics, backyard barbecues, and then catch the Stallions game in a fireworks display. And a lot of people have the following day off.
That's a nice treat to have that, yeah.
So where if they had done everything on Monday, I don't know, with the fact that 4th of July, that's a big holiday for our country. Yeah. And after coming through this pandemic, I think there's going to be more meaning for the 4th of July parade than ever. So just
I agree.
Keeping it on the 4th, that was the right thing to do. I'm glad they did it. And I'm also glad they moved it. And on a Sunday morning, people like to sleep in. They go to church. Moving it from 11 to 1 was a good move. And hopefully they get a good turnout, which I'm sure they will.
One thing, having it fall on the weekend, though, and having the next day off, there might be a lot of folks out of town camping and doing things like that.
That is true. That is true.
But it's a great tradition, and that's certainly one thing that taught us last year, not having it. It was was deeply missed. And I was proud of the parade we put together, though.
Yeah. Yes. And I think the residents, for the most part, they were appreciative, especially
yep.
in the outlying areas.
Yes.
Where they always have to come.
Never, right.
They have to come to the village. We came to them.
Yeah. It was kind of, it was unique. I don't think it was a perfect substitute. There's certainly a better feeling about having that congregative event and the excitement with all the people. You know, when we did the tour of Sargerty's parade, it was, we drove areas where there was just a lot of trees and we didn't see anybody for a while.
Yeah.
Especially in the western part of town, but it was cool.
You get out there in the backwoods.
Yeah. You're driving for quite a bit before you come across another home. So.
But there were stretches like that, and then all of a sudden you came on stretches with a bunch of people on both sides, a lot decked out in their patriotic gear.
Yep, a lot of flags and
American flags.
Yep, it was great. It was fun to be part of. So that was an undertaking, though, and the volunteers who put that together. It's the Sargerty's Fire Department parade, and but the other departments last year all had to participate because they know their district in a way that where should we go, where are the population centers, where can we have a parade that was almost a mile long, not run into itself if we're turning around. And it was really the turnout and the dedication of all those folks to make that successful was really a fun thing to be part of and very uplifting.
Well, how many Sunday morning virtual meetings did we have?
A lot. A lot.
I think it went for about 2 months.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah.
And there were a lot of revisions, a lot of good input. But, I always say when you get a group of people that are dedicated, they've got the initiative, you get a lot of good thoughts, you get a lot of good suggestions out of those heads.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've always said, so much of what we do is successful only because it's a team effort. Yeah. It's not because of one or two people. It's a team effort, and it's a team effort amongst different entities.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at who was at the table for those meetings. Same way with the high school seniors parade.
Yep.
Which was another
it ended up being very successful, but that took a bunch of twists and turns
certainly
that we couldn't.
No way could we have put that on strictly on our own. We needed the school district. We needed the fire departments.
Mm-hmm.
We needed the village of Sargerty's. We needed the DPW. And again, it just goes to show that with a team effort, what can get accomplished.
And
that one there, that was so much more larger and successful than what I thought. And you talk about the parade, the start of the parade coming into the complex before the end of the parade was out. And good old Donnie Tucker, a retired sergeant from the police force who works part-time, to make that split-second decision to bang everyone up. And I didn't even realize he had done that until you had told me when we were on the main field.
He got it. He saw what was happening, and he knew, he had the life of experience handling parades to divert people quickly, not to cause a jam. And it worked out perfectly.
And, I stop and I think how many years when Donnie was working, his post was at Mosier and Market,
mm-hmm.
and that's where he was for that parade.
Yeah.
So I imagine when the chief or the dispatch, whoever, the lieutenant sergeants did a call out, he probably said, "Sure, I'll work, but I want my old post back."
Absolutely. And he was the right person at that right moment because he diverted the cars and that there was no incident to be remembered. I just watched the cars go in a different direction. I'm like, wow, we had the right person at that point, right on time. It was cool. So they're working to plan graduation this year again, and it appears the opportunity to do a more traditional type graduation may exist, and the school officials are working hard to make that determination. And I imagine they're going to make an announcement very soon to the parents who have seniors in the school this year. I know there's some want to continue that parade that we've developed last year. And if they decide to go that route, we'll happily partner with them.
Yeah, and you have to have a plan B in place.
Absolutely.
And if plan A doesn't pan out for whatever reason, you have a plan B in place, which we know worked, and we'll just duplicate that again.
Some really nice sports stories coming out of Sargerty's right now.
Yes.
The girls' softball team's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, they're strong. Strong.
Yeah, and The Fitzpatrick girl and a couple of the others have already made commitments to some pretty substantial schools with programs in softball that there's some nice recognition in there. But they're making a nice run. It's going to be exciting to see how far they get.
It's too bad there's no states this year.
I know.
I think they would have had a good opportunity
really,
to go all the way to the states.
Yeah, they're talented, and they've played together, 6 or 7 years now in the public leagues and the school programs, and they've all been part of travel teams, and they're a really accomplished group of young ladies. It's exciting.
It is exciting. Exciting to watch them. And the varsity baseball team has got a good team.
Yep. Yeah, it's really it's fun, really fun.
Yes, it is. So at 7:35 here in a few minutes, we are expecting Chief Tinti, Kingston City Police Chief, and I'm sure he'll be dragging someone along with him.
Guest.
And then at 8:30, our new Senator, Michelle Hinchy, will be joining us virtually.
Perfect. And she's active. I got to give it to her.
Boy, she hit the ground running, huh?
Yeah.
The only thing is now, on the Spectrum News last night, this thing about releasing all or letting the oh yeah, we'll come back to that. We're past the bottom of the hour, so listeners, we'll be back in a few.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
100 years ago, there were 100,000 tigers in the wild. Today, there are as few as 3,200. The Earth's wild animals can't speak up when they need help, but we can. Be the voice for those who have no voice. Visit worldwildlife.org.
Everyone is talking about healthcare these days. America spends twice that of other developed countries on our healthcare system, yet our health ranks near the bottom. How can we stop spending so much and getting so little? By shifting to a system that gives more patients access to strong primary care. Primary care can help make America healthy again. To learn more about the benefits of primary care, visit www.healthisprimary.org. This message is brought to you by America's Family Physicians.
Screening exams for breast, lung, or colorectal cancers are necessary to detect and treat disease at its earliest, most curable stage. But you may have some concerns and questions. Answer your questions and ease your fears by visiting radiologyinfo.org. In addition to information on screening and wellness, you'll find more than 200 descriptions of radiologic exams, procedures, and treatments to help you prepare. Get informed and be prepared. Visit radiologyinfo.org, produced by the Radiological Society of North America and the American College of Radiology.
As the world faces the challenges of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Lions recognize that kindness matters now more than ever. And Lions and Leos are finding ways to continue to serve our communities, including ordering food delivery for healthcare workers, holding story time for children online, and providing surgical masks to medical professionals and first responders. Empowering us to do more, Lions Clubs International Foundation has provided nearly $2.5 million in grant funding for COVID-19 relief. And that support continues to grow. For more than 100 years, in times of need, Lions always find a way to help those around them. And after we emerge from this, we will be stronger than ever. Visit lionsclubs.org to learn more.
Hi, my name is Jackie Lavezzo. I'm from Lake Katrine, and I support the Kingston Community Radio because it is an invaluable resource to the community and its residents.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio has been brought to you by the First Savings Bank in Ulster County that still remains local to this day. Ulster Savings Bank, a community bank that's invested in local business, invested in community, invested in you. Ulster Savings Bank, your one-stop resource for everything local. Locations throughout the Hudson Valley and online at ulstersavings.com. Member FDIC.
Birdy's choice words.
Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome back, listeners who have been with us, and those just joining us, welcome. We have in the studio here Chief Tinti. Woo! Chief,
Let's get those calls in now.
City of Kingston, and Fred Costello, Supervisor, Town of Sorgetes. And again, 331-9255 is our call-in number. If you have any questions, any concerns for the chief, please reach out and we'll do the best we can, or anything in general.
Anything. We can talk about anything. You name a topic. Hydraulics. I can talk about hydraulics.
Maple syrup. You can talk about maple syrup.
Or the sling that you have on. I don't know about bone setting or anything like that. But you can watch a video. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there.
Yeah.
So.
Do anything off YouTube. Chief, tonight we're getting a presentation by a resident who's been working with the police department to do an analysis of trying to incorporate an EV-powered patrol car, which we haven't done yet.
Okay.
And you folks have, though. You have, or is it just the SROs?
We have, the SROs have a fully electric car. They just use it for that. The problem we have right now, we have hybrids. The newest set of cars that we have, the 4 of them that we ordered back in 19, just showed up, and they are a hybrid, so they're a combination of both. But the full set of electrical, the one car we have right now is the SRO car. The problem that we're running into is Ford, to my knowledge, has not, and we use pretty much the Ford utilities, has not come out with a police pursuit rated vehicle. That's the problem. They make special service. I know there's talk about like a truck coming out, but not for pursuit. So we run into liability issues. Not that we have we don't pursue in most cases unless life's at stake. But so that's presented some issues. And I know agencies in the past that have, we have 2 what we'll call SWAT trucks, emergency response trucks. Those are. Our policy specifically dictates that at no time can. So, not to interrupt you, Jid, that was a caller because you guys gave the call. Was there a shootout on the corner of Franklin and Fair Monday night? Yeah, we had not a shootout, but shots fired. Yeah. Oh, okay. Was it the Pink House, or did they know what happened? Or yeah, well, it wasn't. Because a person that works here lives a couple houses down from that, and said that the street was blocked off and stuff like that, but it wasn't in the paper. Yeah. No one got hurt though. Yeah, it was in the paper. Yeah.
It was? Oh, was it yesterday's?
It should be, yeah.
Oh, okay, because it wasn't in today's.
Well, now,
I didn't see it in yesterday's. No, if it happened Monday evening, it would no way would have made.
Yeah, there's no way it would have made Tuesdays, and it wasn't. I didn't read today's. It was on the online Freeman.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah. Not a lot of people read online Freeman, and no one was hurt though, right?
There?
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Shots fired.
It's on page 2 or 3.
Yeah, so if we're going to talk about that, if the call is concerned, I got to tell you, I've fielded a number of calls. I know it's a concern, the violence in Kingston, violence in all major cities, right? If you look at
and all of New York, really,
the whole of New York. I mean, I can speak just about at Kingston, certainly, but if you look at everybody around us citywide, there's issues. And I'll tell you, I know people call my office, and I'm going to try not to get elevated in my blood pressure as I talk about this, but people are like, what are the cops doing? What are the cops doing? We're doing everything we can. That's what we're doing. And there's a level of frustration in my voice because people want us to solve crimes and do all these things, right? Bring people to justice. But we're still making arrests. And we know there's a direct connection between drugs and guns, drugs and violence. We recognize that, right? It's historic. I get it. But now, in the past, when we've made drug arrests, we've been able to hold those drug dealers,
right?
The same ones that we may not have been able to prove,
and to come to your defense,
or pin a gun on.
Right.
We now know are out in the street,
right? Because they're not going to be held with bail.
We may not catch them with a gun, but we can catch them with the drugs,
right?
And even drug investigations have changed over the last. Listen, when I came on in 2011 as chief, we had clean sweep, right? And an investigation that took place over a course of a year, and we had 80 plus indictments. But the majority of those are drug related. But we fully recognize that part of that is there's violence that is associated with drug trade.
And also, to come to your defense real quick, having no bail is a big problem.
Well, in some cases, so I'll be the first to tell you that I believe that bail reform needed to happen. It had to. We were putting people overnight because they couldn't afford a $100 bail. That's ridiculous, right?
That's okay.
Right. So
that is
when we talk about bail reform, we have to acknowledge that low-level offenses, it just didn't make any sense.
Right.
Right? You're going to hold a guy because he had You stole $25 of food and you're going to, come on, that's just ridiculous, right? Overnight. But now we're talking about heavyweight, right? Dealers in drugs that we're limited to. You've seen some of the stuff that, we get criticized as law enforcement, but we're still bringing the people in front of the judges and the courts. Sometimes their hands are tied too. I recognize that. Sure. But this has to change. If people want things to change, then they've got to affect that change. We're playing by the rules, right? I asked for LPRs. Not everybody voted for license plate readers. They said, well, the technology is intrusive. We worry about police using it for nefarious purposes.
Jeez.
You say, geez, but it happened. Yeah, I know. You want cameras. People want security. Put up cameras. And I'm not blaming the individuals or the residents or the business owners. And again, I'm trying not to get elevated. It is a level of frustration because it is. It's a level of frustration because I understand the individual. People say, oh, let's get Ring doorbells. Great idea. But as an individual, as a homeowner, I put that camera up there and it does catch a crime. It does. It catches the guy running down the street with a gun in his hand, properly identified. I can tell who it is, right? Perfect. That video, if we use it, introduces into court, gets turned over to, as part of the discovery, gets turned over. The individual who committed that crime knows where that camera's stationed now, knows the household. You think that people aren't afraid? Of course they're afraid. They don't want to get involved in that. They don't want to point across that's the guy who did it, right? They're worried about retaliation. And to some degree, I understand that. I do. So the mechanism to replace that is to let the government do it, right? And again, I'm doing my best not to get elevated on this response, but put up the cameras. If you want the cop to catch the people, right? Let's talk about behavior. If I wanted to punch Fred in the face right now, I could do it and you couldn't stop me. If I lost my mind right now and punched him in the face, you couldn't stop me without even knowing that there's a beef between us, which there isn't, right? For the callers, there's no beef. Right? I love the guy. But my point is right there. I punch you in the mouth. What happens? You're a witness. The cops come in. They arrest me. Okay, good, right? I go to jail, bail, whatever happens after the cops handle you is in the system. I can't stop it. You can't stop it. He can't stop it. But what can happen is I punch him in the face and it catches me running out here. I make the arrest. The cops then show up and they come to my house and go, hey, you punched him in the face. You're under arrest. Without the technology, and again, everybody carries it, right? Yep. Everybody's got this. Why aren't we using that? And so my plea out there today is for the public to understand, support the need for police officers to have technological backing and financial backing. We did the law enforcement initiative, the blue and gray last year that we had. Mm-hmm. I will fully admit that there were some ramifications to that in addition to having the cops out there. Some of the public, right? And I'll use the analogy that was given to me, the saying is, we caught dolphins in the tuna net, right? That's what ended up happening. People got stopped unnecessarily because they had a taillight out. All legal justified stops, every one of them. There was no issues of cops doing stop and frisk like some of the public. Oh, stop and frisk. I call BS on that. There was no stop and frisk. We stopped legitimate. When we had probable cause, the cops made the stop. Done. That was it. All the arrests held up in court. There was none thrown out because of lack of evidence or lack of probable cause. All of it was upheld. No problems. People didn't like it. I get it. But if they don't like that, the heavy-handed approach to police work, which I fully admit was my initial knee-jerk response. Oh, we got crime? Send in more cops. But not everybody wants the cops in their neighborhood or wants to get. We went from 5 cops on duty to 15 cops on duty overnight. Overnight.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Tripled.
Just like that. Poof. There were cop cars, one on every block. And some people said, yeah, great, let's do this. But the ones that are affected most were the ones in Midtown, the ones where the violence is occurring, right? And some of them, although they fully appreciate having the safety and security of having a good neighborhood, don't always appreciate the fact that the cops, because of historical issues, right? I recognize that, have to do with how they protect them, how the law enforcement acts. So in response, we're trying to do a lot more focused community policing to try to build the trust that we're here really to help. We're not here just to write the tickets, but we have to work together to get these guns off the street. Because at the end of the day, there is a very small population of Kingston that causes the greatest problems. And they have determined, and I don't want to sound like my father, although he would have an Italian accent right now, they need to be gone. And I'm not one of these guys that says, I've been essentially booed for saying they're bad guys. Listen to me. They are bad guys. You don't know what I know. These individuals have shown an inherent disregard for adhering to social norms.
Right.
And I'm not judging them by their upbringing. It may be economic issues. They may have been people that have been traumatized in their life. I get it. But there are certain rules about living in society.
Absolutely.
And carrying a gun and shooting out in the open is not one of those rules.
But
they need to be locked up.
But don't you think if we had bail reform, and some of these criminals aren't stupid, and I'm not giving them any, don't you think they know there's going to be no consequences? You know, if you don't kill a person, you're not going up to bed. Like
I'll say this. Bail reform has to be re-examined.
It does.
It
really has to be re-examined.
Maybe if
it's
the
making
elected
your job
officials are
harder.
listening, if those individuals that have determined it needs to be reformed, which I agree needed reform, can sit down and review it with law enforcement at the table, the boots on the ground, and I'm not talking sit down and have a discussion about it and say, what do you see? How can they deny the fact that crime has been up in every city in New York State? Every city. How do you argue that? What do you put that on? COVID?
No.
Stop.
It's bail reform.
Right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of factors, right? Cops are apprehensive about going out and doing their job to the fullest because of criticism. I recognize that. I tell the officers, I understand. It's difficult sometimes to get out there. You get out of your car and people are like, oh, blah, blah, blah. They have the phones going, cop watch, everything's. But if you act professionally, be courteous, follow your policies and procedures, and have that camera on, you have nothing to worry about. Even if the subject, you find something in the car that doesn't belong to them, you make an arrest, and that subject says, I'm not going. And you got to use physical force because, let me tell you, you're going. When a cop says you're under arrest, you do not have the right anywhere in that Constitution to resist arrest. If you don't agree with what that officer did, tell it in front of the judge. And again, I'm trying to breathe in between the words to bring my blood pressure down because I know my wife is going to call later and say, what have you done? But yesterday and the day before, I feel calls and I hear the voice. I hear the tone of their voice. What can we do? What can we do? We're doing everything we can. Will I say we need more cops? Listen, you give me more cops, I can do more, right? I can get them out more. We're fully staffed. We're not down any police officers. We have a couple out long-term injured, and we have a few in the academy. So we don't have everybody out doing the work. That's the difficult part.
But you do have your full complement.
We do. We have 71
budgeted.
budgeted.
I think the last time I'd asked you were down 4 or 5.
The commission just interviewed 7 candidates.
Well, that's good to hear.
It is very good.
Very good to hear.
And again,
that's a step in the right direction.
And in fairness to the council and the mayor and the police commission, these are the circumstances of civil service. Everyone was saying, oh, they're not hiring the cops. The mayor's not doing this. The council's not doing this. The chief's not doing this. You don't know what I know. We have limitations. We have 7 candidates that have to be processed. We're down detectives in our division, and we can't promote until we have backfill from patrol. And we can't backfill patrol until we have candidates to interview. So do you see how we get locked into this cycle? Sure. So we're kind of breaking through the clouds now, right? I use that all the time. We're kind of breaking through the clouds. But of the 5 we just hired, 3 have to go to the police academy. We won't see anything as far as a boots on the ground in the street until next February. Let me explain. The academy starts August. Those 3 individuals we hired, which they don't have a start date yet, most likely sometime in July, will work dispatch for about a month. I'm just going to take a breath here. I'm sorry. See, this is cool. And for about a month, they worked dispatch.
Lawrence, you got him wound up.
Oh, you got me good.
That's right. We're going to...
You started me up.
It was just a listener. We'll go to break in 10 minutes, and then we can do some
medication.
WUSA
I did take yoga
training.
for a little while. So, and it helps. So August, the academy starts. From August to about December, they go through the phase 1, phase 2 pre-employment and phase 2 program, which they do firearms. After that, they graduate essentially middle of December, and they go through 12 weeks of field training. During those 12 weeks of field training, they ride with a senior FTO, field training officer, and they get assessed on how they act. The on-the-job part is what they do, right? Because Kingston is different than Saugerties. Our computer system may be different. How we operate, accident reports and stuff across the state are standardized. But how we handle domestics, not because we're part of IPV, all right? So, and Saugerties now too.
Yeah.
Right? So there's how we do that is maybe slightly different than, say, the town of Rosendale. I'll use them as an example. Come on, and talk. You got to take over this mic, Mike. Yeah, they got me. He got me good. He got me good. He got me good about the shootings and the. Anyway,
you torched him right up.
It wasn't like I was trying to get you. It was a listener
and
that called in.
I'll say this. I apologize to the readers for kind of losing my I won't say lose my temper, but I get frustrated because people keep pointing at the cops. Do something, do something, do something. And every time I say, this is what we can do, someone says, oh, you shouldn't do that. Cameras. We're going to promote cameras, right? Government-owned, city-owned camera system. Not that we can watch real time. We don't have the staff. But evidentiary and investigative-wise, they are an incredible resource for us. There should be one, I dare say, if people want public safety, every block should have one. Now, Chief, what about looking in my bedroom window? Chief, what about checking my car? If you're in a public space and you're doing something wrong, don't do it in a public space.
They're the only people that are against cameras. The ones that are not on the up and up, and they've got something to hide. Plain and simple.
So I'll go back, right?
But before you do that, okay, take a breath. Take a sip of coffee. we just joined.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to rally you up. I was trying to. It was a question.
You got
from
me,
the
brother.
listener.
You got me good.
I mean, I'm sure you get these questions asked every day.
So it was good
But it all
timing
stems
for
from bail
Mike
reform,
Mike
and you know
Bonse.
that.
Good morning.
Okay.
It was good timing. Let's see. Your official title.
Deputy Chief.
Deputy Chief, that's right, Deputy Chief. I get all this stuff all mixed up. Too many people. So anyway, the sincerity in your voice you say about getting elevated, but if you weren't to get elevated, there's certainly, you're sincere in what you're saying. You're sincere in what you're doing. You're sincere in what you want to do, and you have a plan in place. And we'll come back to that in a minute. We have a caller. Good morning, caller. You're on the air with Kingston Community Radio.
Good morning, gentlemen. How everybody doing today?
Great.
We are doing. How are you doing, George?
Oh, not too bad. Can't complain at all. But hey, Chief, you do have a tough job. Well, you got outside groups, and you got political leaders telling you guys to back off a little bit. And like you said, with bail reform, that stinks. That needs to be addressed. You can't not arrest these guys that have them back out on the street before your police officers are back out on the street. And it's something that really should be looked at and stuff. And like you got political leaders, like our Attorney General for the state of New York was telling New York City police officers, oh, back off on your traffic stops or whatever to where they don't cause big problems. Hey, listen to what the police officer tells you to do, follow instructions, and you have no problems. But these people want to fight, argue, and the way that they was calling certain police officers on videotape murderers is ridiculous. You guys are nothing like that. You people are great out there. I support you, and a lot of other people support you 100%. And we respect the job that you guys do, which is a very tough job. And we need our our political leaders to stop talking this, defunding the police and calling our police Gestapo and stuff like that, because none of that helps. And they need to start teaching their youth to go back and respect the police. Because you guys are there to do good and not bad. And if you are breaking the law, you need to worry. You need to be afraid of what's going to happen because you are breaking the law.
George, thank you. Thank you for the support. We recognize that there's a large population out there in this area that does support law enforcement. And I'll say this, the elected officials, they do support law enforcement. It's just they have a difficult job. I'm not trying to defend sometimes what they do. I've never heard anyone say we don't need cops. They have all said we need cops. What we've had to do as a city of Kingston, as a department, is switch up how we police the city. Because it's not, I'll say this, you were probably raised the way I was. The police officer says get on the sidewalk, you got on the sidewalk. There was no, why do I have to get on the sidewalk? How come you're doing this? Why are you picking on me? There was none of that. It was get on the sidewalk, okay, I'm getting on the sidewalk. So as an eye-opener, when I came on in 1992, and I would say, hey, can you do me a favor? We've had a call. Can you get back on the sidewalk? And they go, why? I was shocked. Shocked, because that was not my upbringing. And I get it. But understanding how that works now, we have techniques that we try to use, right? Procedural justice is one big one. And I'll let the deputy chief talk about that in the next half hour while I catch my breath and pull out my yoga mat here to try to reduce my elevated blood pressure. But my point is that the majority of the population do give you the license when you're asked on a traffic stop. Sir, could you give me your license registration? In some cases, people will say, why'd you stop me? And the officer then has to make a determination based upon the conditions that exist at the time to tell them, or to say, ma'am, sir, could you just please give me your license and I'll be happy to tell you, right? So it depends. As long as you're explaining, and this wasn't always the case when they came on, when I raised my kids, the saying was BISS, B-I-S-S. Dad, why do I got to do my homework now? And I would say, BISS, because I said so. That's not how we operate today. Now I do have a lot more patience. I close my eyes, turn my head, take a deep breath, and come back into the conversation sometimes because that's where I have to do it. But the fact of the matter is we have to treat the public differently. They're no longer accepting. There is a sense of you can question authority. You can question it, but not at the time of arrest. When a police officer says, you're under arrest, put your hands behind your back, that's that. You don't like it? You think it's false arrest? Tell it to the judge. But as soon as you pull away or start to argue or slap his hands as they're pulling out the cuffs, there's a bigger problem at hand.
Yep.
You don't have the right to do that.
And a real good example of what you're saying, and I was so glad the way the DA in North Carolina ruled without bringing charges against those police officers. When you saw that video, which was just released yesterday, of that car, of that individual in the car, first backing up with a police officer with his hand on the car, and then after repeatedly telling the individual to get out of the car, and a police officer in the front of the car, the same police officer, he drives forward, knocking that officer to the ground. Now, if that's not using your vehicle as a deadly weapon, I don't know what the heck is. And to have these people protesting and expressing outrage, unfortunately, they just have the tunnel vision. If that had happened to somebody that was within their family, that was in law enforcement, if that individual police officer or any of those police officers or any of the five were members of any of those families, they wouldn't be protesting. They wouldn't be outraged, but they see it one way and one way only. And I was so happy to see it was a DA throughout the charges.
There's a lot of factors, right? George, you mentioned the caller mentioned that people should respect the police, but I will acknowledge that there are individuals out there and people of color that have come to fear the police. When there's a stop, there's an inherent fear, right? They've seen the videos, they believe what they see. I can tell you our department is extremely, highly well-trained. We are. The complaints we get, when we get complaints, and the deputy chief can talk about it, he reviews them now.
He's going to get a chance to talk?
I hope so. I'm going to try to stay on that side of the door, right? You might hear me yelling through there, but first, we don't get them. And two, the complaints we do get is, well, I thought the officer should have been nicer. I think if he just would have explained it the way you did, right? Those are the things. Because anytime we get a use of force complaint and we review it, and I can only speak of the ones that we've done in the past, the use of force, the claims of excessive force have occurred at the time of arrest due to noncompliance. Put your hands behind your back.
And if that
what do you mean no? No, I'm not going. You're going. No. And I'll say it like I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be like crazy about it. You're going. It'll be ugly, but it's going to be your determination on how this goes. I can click the cuffs on, tick, tick, tick. Double lock them, put them in the car, transport, process, and
no
you're done.
force.
And mostly,
No
most
force.
likely, as a result of a lot of the reform stuff, you're going to be released with an appearance ticket. Sure. Most of the time, right? But if you say, no, I've got someplace to be, or no, I didn't do that. No, she's lying, he's lying, whatever, then there's a problem. Because as soon as you push off, then I've got to escalate my force. And at some point, when the guy, and I say guy, and a while back we've had one where a taser needed to be deployed last year. Clearly, the officers gave this individual every opportunity. Him and I looked at it and went, come on already. Let's pull the taser on this guy. What are they waiting on, right? Enough's enough. But there's a level of apprehension that these officers have now because, one, use of force gets reviewed every time it's used. Every time. Just to make sure that they're adhering to the policies. We don't judge on how much force was used as long as it was used appropriately, right? And you can talk about the escalation part of it and where it falls in. And Mike's a use of force instructor, and he can. The next half hour is all going to be about him, right? Because I think the public needs to know. Because when you look at a video, I swear, you got tape in there just to tape this up.
Okay, we need to go to a break. We're past the top of the hour.
There it is.
All right, that's one way of shutting them down. It's 8:02. We'll be back in a few, listeners.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer: the drug facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the drug facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/drug facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Introducing the YMCA. Sure, you know the Y for a swim or a game of hoops, but we're more than that. We're a cause. When you take a jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Practice yoga as a team practices her leadership skills. We give people of all ages, incomes, and backgrounds a chance to learn, grow, and thrive. So while you might think of the Y as the place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. That's the Y. We're so much more. Visit ymca.net/more.
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we're fighting against childhood cancer every day. At the heart of this battle are our donors.
Most of us want to make some type of difference in the lives of others. St. Jude does miraculous work.
The fact that no one has to pay, it's a place where everyone is treated as an equal.
Everybody is welcome here. And it doesn't matter your religion or what part of the world you're from, all that is taken away. It just gives you some hope.
It's just a nice feeling to put your energy into something that really does genuinely make a difference in a child's life.
There's just no greater gift. If we have the ability to help, then we have a responsibility to help.
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Find out how you can help at stjude.org.
Hi, this is Tony Marmo from Norman Staffing, and we've been bringing together employers and job seekers since 1980. If you're an employer and have job vacancies, let Norman Staffing help fill them with permanent or temporary workers. We screen, interview, and recommend the best candidates for your company. We make the employment process easier and faster for you. Please call Norman Staffing for your employment needs at 338-9111, 338-9111, or normanstaffing.com.
Hi, this is Winnie from the Rosendale Seniors, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
Rondout Savings Bank has a long history of serving local communities and maintaining a strong tradition of customer service excellence while providing each customer with the personal attention they deserve. Rondout Savings' approach to community banking puts you and the growth of your business in the front of everything they do. They're a different kind of bank and would like to tell you why, so please reach out to one of their expert business bankers for an appointment and let them show you what they can do for you. Rondout Savings Bank, always working for you and the community with branches in Kingston, West Hurley, and Hyde Park. Also online at rondoutbank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome back, listeners who have been with us, and especially those in the last half hour that got to hear the chief. Those just joining us, welcome. 331-9255 is our call-in number. We'd love to hear from you. For the second week in a row, unfortunately, we do not have any birthdays. Another cow pie goes down the drain, goes to waste. So, listeners, please send the birthdays in. It's very simple to do.
We're very low on birthdays. We are. Even for the rest of the week and next week, I've noticed it's not. We used to have stacks of them.
Yeah.
And now we don't.
So it's very easy. You can email to kcr921@gmail.com. You can postal mail to Kingston Community Radio, P.O. Box 4364, Kingston, New York, 12402. And those cow pies are courtesy of Boyce Dairy Milk House and Kingston Community Radio. So with the fact that we don't have birthdays to read, we should take the time, Lawrence, to roll the video that occurred during our break.
I didn't record that. I didn't record that.
And the recording.
But the chief made a lot of good points, though.
And Fred, did you bring up Mobile Life's telephone number on your phone? Just to click one.
I have it on speed. We're okay.
Have it on speed dial.
Yeah, have it on speed.
So those
my card's expired, but
They actually have me wear those pads for the AED, just in case, just so they can
Plug them right in.
Just
plug them right in. So for those listeners just join us, we have Kingston City Police Chief Tinti, and we have Deputy Police Chief Mike Bonse, and Fred Costello, supervisor from the town of Saugerties.
Good morning.
So I don't know where we want to pick up or leave off, but I did hear prior to the break that the deputy chief was going to get an opportunity.
To speak. You did say that.
Yeah, we were talking about use of force and responsive police, and something that came to mind as we were having that discussion was, in one hand, yes, it's troubling that we have resisting arrest issues, particularly today when the likelihood is the person that's getting arrested is probably going to get an appearance ticket. So you kind of question, why make the situation worse when you can get your time in court, right? And then at a time really where even sentences are being reduced, and there's a lot of other alternatives to sentencing right now. So it is kind of troubling that people still continue to resist arrest. Use of force is, the chief mentioned about, reviewing use of force and studying use of force. And what's interesting is, and maybe it's just a perspective thing that I look at it as, when the decision is made to use force, and no cop ever wants to have to use it, right? It's the response to making an arrest. It's the response to actions taken by somebody else or choices taken by somebody else. And I think it's important to distinguish that every police use of force incident or every police critical incident, right? Whether it's on the minor scale of you're under arrest, no, I'm not, they pull their hand away, to somebody that's involved in a large-scale crime involving other people, barricading up in their house, with family or whatever, right? Every single use of force incident, the outcome or the safety of those involved is first determined by one person. There's one person that has complete control as to how that outcome or how that incident's resolved, and that's the defendant or the suspect or the person of investigation, right? Mm-hmm. If that person chooses to comply, everybody goes home safely. Doesn't mean they're not going to be arrested, doesn't mean we're not going to have to take police action, but they decide whether or not use of force is necessary. If we leave that decision up to them, or if they recognize that decision, we can go home safely. If they don't make the right decision, then the police have to make a decision. The police have to act, right? Police officers are going to have to use force, or they're going to have to make an arrest, or they're going to have to use certain tactics to resolve the incident. When police are forced to make those decisions or to use force, there's an eventuality that injuries may result, right, if the person resists. Mm-hmm. And then when you're trying to factor into that, the fact that there's usually more than just the two people involved, right? There's usually a suspect or defendant of some type. There's a victim of whether it's, if it's a crime against a person, then clearly there's a human victim, or a victim if it's a crime against property because somebody owns that property. Somebody has a responsibility to that property. And then there's, the police that are responding to it. Well, our first job as officers is to make sure that the victim's first protected, right? The first person, a cop will put themselves in harm's way to protect a victim. A cop will put themselves in harm's way to protect themselves. But it's unfortunate that when we have to take police action to arrest somebody or to end an incident, we shouldn't expect cops to put themselves in harm's way to defend the person that caused the incident, right? So that's kind of at the base of all use of force.
Mm-hmm.
And as we look at use of force, and now in my current role, I have to investigate them. That my job, one of my primary jobs, is investigation of use of force complaints.
But there's in part due to outside influences, there was a long trend where tasers became a preferred alternative to de-escalate a situation, and they have some repercussions. But one officer can use that as a force multiplier and take down someone who's having a violent outburst, or in many cases. But now that there's kind of movement away from that, it looks different, because you're going to have 2, 3, 4 officers to subdue somebody who's in that. The picture of that is not very appealing.
That's a great point, because and whether it's taser or the baton or OC spray, different agencies use different things, but we have a lot of tools on our belt, right? There's kind of a chain or a ladder some people look at as a use of force continuum, right? We start with our presence. Our mere presence should have an impact, and then we go to verbal direction, then physical direction, then the use of either OC spray or a taser or an impact weapon, right up to firearm, or in some cases, policies will allow for deadly physical force by emergency tool, right? To say that the firearm isn't the only tool that may be used in a deadly force case. Maybe a vehicle would be used, or maybe you need to use a chair, right? Whatever it is in that moment to make everybody as safe as possible. And there is, I think, in some cases, this exactly what you're saying is there's whether it's apprehension, whether it's the community not wanting to see the taser being used or the OC spray or whatever it is, but every one of those decisions comes with a price tag on it, right? There was a time where maybe an encounter where somebody is fighting with the officer, that the officer may have used a punch or a kick or some type of strike to stun them, immobilize them, take them off their game, disrupt their process for a minute so that they could get the upper hand on them. And I think cops today are afraid to do that. So what you'll get is we'll get 2, 3, 4 officers, and everybody's just trying to grab a piece of the person, because nobody wants to be the one that throws that punch on camera. Nobody wants to be the one that uses that knee strike on camera. But at the same time, right, if I have my arms locked underneath me and I'm grasping my wrists or my hands and I'm refusing to let you get my hands free, and I'm no big muscle fitness guy, but I'll tell you right now, if I laid on the ground and did this and locked my arms together, the 3 of you are not getting my arms apart. Just by wrestling on me. And especially in a heightened elevated state with adrenaline pumping and everything else that goes into it. So that's what the taser would be used for, or potentially, to use the baton or the different tools, right? And there's not a tool that works every time, and not every tool will work when you want it to work, right? So there's so many factors that go into use of force, and there's so many other environmental factors that are also going at that I don't think people see, right? If you watch a use of force incident on camera and you see 2 cops, 3 cops, 4 cops on the ground wrestling with somebody, just trying to get their arms out to get the handcuffs on them, that can be quite the struggle. In the midst of all of that, the other factor that has to be going through their mind is what's going on environmentally around me, right? So while we may advocate for officers, take your time and do the best you can to get the person's arms free without having to break anything, without having to injure yourself, without having to escalate up the chain or whatever the decision may be, that decision might change where the call is happening, the time of day the call is happening, and what the surrounding factors are, right? If you're in somebody's house and we're in this room and there's no other outside influences, we can take our time dealing with you. There's no other way we're going to get hurt. It's just a matter of getting you safely out of that situation. But if we're out on the sidewalk in the middle of the day, if you have friends and family that are present while we're trying to take you into custody, and now they're amplifying and they're escalating and they're potentially causing either public disturbance, a public safety issue, or harms to the officers, as this goes on, everybody's getting a little more heightened, right? So trying to get those incidents over as quickly as possible is another factor, right? And it's also a public safety factor, and to try to minimize, we've taught cops for years, if you have to be at a scene and you have to make an arrest, make that arrest and get the person out of there as quickly as you can. Because the longer you're there in that environment, trying to keep that person detained. They're elevating. Outside, other people are elevating. You're just increasing the odds that you're going to have another incident.
Another problem.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and then I guess to go along with that, another kind of use of force training principle for many years has always been, the quicker the use of force incident's over, the safer it is for everybody involved. And I guess the best way to describe that would be if you were in a boxing match or you're in a fist fight. If that fist fight was over in 10 seconds versus a fist fight that lasted 60 seconds, you're 6 times more likely to get injured in a 60-second boxing match.
Yeah.
The same thing with a firearms encounter, right? If it was a shootout that lasts 2 minutes versus a shootout that lasts 20 minutes is going to have 10 times more, possibility for injury to yourself or to other people involved. So, we've always tried to make the use of force incident get over as quickly as possible. And the chief had mentioned earlier about, sometimes it's ugly, right? A phrase I heard along the way at one point was use of force is kind of like cooking eggs. Even when you do it right, it's not pretty. And it just kind of is the way it is, right? And, it's some things that...
There's influences that are changing those paradigms too, though. Like when you get barricaded subjects, it's a last resort where you're sending the SWAT team in to aggressively resolve the situation. You kind of secure the perimeter and wait it out and try to use.
And I think every situation, every scenario is different. Right?
Mhm.
There are factors to it, right? But yeah, something like a textbook barricade subject. If there's no direct threat to the safety of others, you would take your time, right?
Mhm.
Again, going back to what I said before about this, everything is suspect driven,
Mhm.
but it also depends on are there victims or not, right? So if it was just a barricade with nobody else in there, take our time. Why would I send a cop in there and put a cop in harm's way because this person's in crisis? For what reason, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to put the cop's life at danger. But if there are hostages or potential victims inside, then that changes. Right?
Yeah,
If
an active
there's
shooter
bystanders-
situation. I've watched that evolve over the years where, you make the call and you kind of secure a perimeter until you have a mass that could be successful. Now it's you go and you get there. If you're first, you go in. And many times that first responder is going to be there with their sidearm against the high-powered assault type of weapon, and you're outgunned by a long shot.
That's a great example. And if we go back to pre-Columbine, right, Columbine, Colorado, there was the criticism of that was just that the police got there, they surrounded, they waited, and they waited for SWAT to come. And then we've had a couple of these. There's nothing worse, I think, in our society than active shooters in schools, right? The school is a sacred institution. It's a safe place. There's absolutely nothing worse than that. So if we look at that and how that's progressed in the last 20 or 30 years, and it started with surround and call out, wait for SWAT. Then it moved up to, all right, we need, as soon as we get 4 cops there, we're going to send 4 cops in. And then it was, well, you know what, maybe you got to go with 3. And it's evolved to the point today where first cop on the scene is going to probably run in there by themselves.
Mhm.
And they may be outmanned, they may be outgunned, and it goes back to that scale before, right? That on that scale, the number one, the highest position is victims. So if there are victims, there's an expectation that police will put themselves in harm's way to protect victims. If there's innocent bystanders, we may have to take a different thing. And then if it's just a barricade and he's by himself, we're not going to put ourselves in harm's way, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that works. But active shooter, I think it brings up another interesting kind of point of where we are today, why we are where we are, right? So we went from that model of surround and call out to, all right, officer, when this happens, get in there, right? We know that statistically it's like 90 or 92% of active shooters will commit suicide upon first police
They're
contact.
challenged, yeah.
So knowing that, get the cop to him as quickly as possible, right? There was some studies, and it's been a while since I studied them, but something like every 30 seconds to 60 seconds, there was loss of life during these incidents. So the quicker we get to them,
The less loss of life, yeah.
right? So that was the idea behind it. But we had to shift an entire generation of officers that were told, wait outside till SWAT gets there, to, you got your sidearm in, go in and go get them, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of training put into that. And, a lot of reality-based training, a lot of scenarios. We did, countless trainings with school districts, with police departments all over this county for how many years? 10, 15 years, right? We were into that. And we got that shift. And at the same time, we're teaching the new officers, this is the way the job is done. Now we have a workforce of people. The majority of these new officers have only been on since that shift. It's not a change for them. They know that's the expectation. So coming off of that, the next kind of big, police evolution and training was 9/11 came, and we had the horrific events of September 1st or September 11th, 2001. So, with response to that, police were told, all right, you're also now the front line in the war on terror. For the last 20 years, you've been on the front line of the war on drugs. Now you're the front line of the war on terror. And really the best model we have available for American law enforcement is to treat the true terrorist acts that occur the same way we treat the active shooters. Get in there as quickly as possible, mitigate this as quickly as possible, in reviewing incidents that happened like in Beslan, Russia, stuff like that, we saw that if you didn't respond quickly, the longer you gave those terrorists time to fortify, to secure their position, the worse it was. So we recognize we have to respond as quickly as possible when these things occur. So again, we're telling cops, get in there, rush in there. This is we created this warrior mindset, right? And that's really, I think, in part what led to kind of the criticism of today's latest police evolution, that we want to take cops from the warrior mindset to the guardian mindset. And really, you got to have both, right? You got to be able to flip that switch, because if any of these horrific events occur, we still need our cops to run into them. But at the same time, we have to take that guardianship thing. But I think part of that is, responding to active shooter training, responding to becoming the front line in the war on terror. We spent a lot of time, a lot of money on training, on doing reality-based training scenarios. There was Homeland Security funding for equipment, for gear, for training, for schools, and it was because it was important, and it still is important. But that was, for a long time, probably the number one funded training initiative, was response to those type of events. So we spent a lot of time and energy training on that, because that was the primary mission. So I think a little bit of, what we learned in those times was, when you're dealing with a critical incident, get in there as quick as you can and put the person, that the actor, the bad guy, on their heels, disrupt their thought process, make them respond to you instead of continuing what their act was. 20 years of building a warrior cop, then the recognition is maybe some of that spilling into other avenues, right? Maybe some of that spilling into response to other things. We get to a problem, end it as quick as we can, right? We've been taught, end this problem as quick as we can. And I think, on a large scale, I'm not, specific incidents in Kingston or Ulster County or anything like that, but on a large scale in policing, we have to look at that. And we have to look at, we've spent now the last probably 6 years looking at slowing everything down. When you get there, slow everything down. Don't rush into situations. Take the time. Work on de-escalation. Work on other communications. And it's really, it goes back to training. We have to train to do both. We have to train to be both. But the important part is we have to train to make that recognition early, so that we don't run in when we should be slowing down, and we don't slow down when we should be running in. And at the same time, we're asking this of
these are all humans, right?
22, 23-year-old kids, right, with limited life experience, that are under high stress, working in a dark alley by themselves at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? So there's a lot of human factors that go into it.
Yeah, it's an interesting career. It's tough, but I think so. I don't think it's manifested, especially amongst communities that feel like policing has let them down in some capacity. But at some point, all the changes in policing, I mean, the way you guys function is different now than it was a year ago, and it's certainly different than it was 5 years ago. At some point, don't you think the pendulum's going to switch, where there's a new acknowledgement or trust in the policing, the community policing of agencies around? I kind of sense that that's starting to happen a little bit now in the dialogue that's happening.
It is. I feel the same way, and I also feel if the gun violence and the killings don't start to subside, you're going to see more of an outpouring from residents, at least the majority of residents, where some of these laws have to be revisited, and how we handle
makes that change. The elected officials, the legislators up in Albany, make that determination.
And as you said,
those are the ones that should be held, their feet held to the fire.
And as you said earlier, I didn't want to interrupt you. Okay.
Well, he's done talking, so I'm good. And I'll sum up. He did an incredible job saying what I tried to say early on. He used the procedurally just way to explain use of force. I'll say it. Don't resist arrest. Right? There it is. It's simple. Don't do it. Go in front of the judge. But go ahead, Gary. I'm sorry.
First of all, I was really amazed.
Pretty good, right? You see me bite my hand a little bit?
I was almost speechless here. And
my
I'm
wife
saying,
texted me, was checking on me.
God, we've gone 15, 18 minutes and not a
proud of
peep.
myself, to
But
be
anyway,
honest.
as you said earlier, where the legislatures need to do, and Fred and I talked about this not so much as far as in the police circle. This is applicable to every circle for every industry. Bring the parties to the table. Bring the legislatures. Bring law enforcement to the table and get law enforcement input. When they passed the first bail reform bill, there was no involvement from law enforcement. How do you pass bills, especially a bill so drastic with the bail reform, without any kind of input from law enforcement? It was something that they were on a mission that they wanted to pass through, and they did it.
And needed to be. Again, I'll go back. Bail reform needed to occur.
Bail reform needed to occur, but in a different scenario than the way it did occur and what was instituted.
That's correct. Yeah. It went all the way to the other side.
Exactly.
And now we got to just find that
middle.
But in order to do that, there has to be an examination, right? And my frustration is, and he hears it every day, so I apologize to you, Deputy Chief, for hearing it again this morning.
You were doing so good for 20 minutes.
I know, but
there.
I'm done with that.
You had it down, you relaxed.
15 minutes, guys. That's a lot. Come on. You got to give it to me. We are Kingston, a small city in New York State. Is there not a round table of experts, right? People that all they do is think about this stuff and say, I wonder what the ramifications of that decision will be. Okay, don't care. Put it out there. How is it not being discussed up there? They have to look at that, right? Our Attorney General, in a report to Kingston, said, don't put SROs in the school and don't do police initiatives like you did last year. They said it. And understanding that it affects people of color more. That's what Letitia Game didn't write the report, but her staff did. So that puts us on notice as an agency that we have to do things differently, because we say, doesn't matter, we're still going to go out there, right? Keep writing the tickets, stop the cars, do the job. Which some of the public is saying, that's what we want, Chief. We want you to go out there and that's it. The Attorney General's office said, don't do that. So we got to switch gears. We have to find a different way. As the Deputy Chief points out, we went from warrior mindset to guardian mindset. Obama's 21st century policing, right? That's one of the tenets, is to discuss how a police officer gets integrated into the community that he or she polices. Difficult. Because at any point, you could be helping a child cross the street, and the next call you get is an active shooter in the school. And you've got to be able to switch that gear. For years, the United States military was giving us stuff. You want guns, you want tanks, because that's what it's going to take. This war on terrorism requires a military-style response. Now, if you got a military vehicle in your fleet, holy cow, forget it. It's no good. The public doesn't want to see it. We recognize that there's a shift. We do. I've said it from the time I became chief. We will police the city of Kingston the way it wants to be policed. But understand that there's a transitional period that we have to go through to get there. So we still need cops to be warriors. We had a few retire. And I say, they were warriors. If it hit the fan, those are the ones I want. If I could assemble a team, they would be on it. Because they would go. They'd take down the wall if they had to make that event stop. But there's others that are better suited not to be warriors, right? Outside perimeter. Where's he bone? Put him in the outside perimeter, right? Because it takes a certain level of police officer to be able to switch it and go.
Right. Unfortunately, we are out of time. An hour just doesn't do it.
I think it's enough.
You did really good, though, on answering the questions. And
I'm sorry, but you got me good this morning.
Well, I didn't get you good. It was a listener that lives on Fair Street that was concerned, and you answered it very respectfully and professionally.
City
of Kingston
Police.
You did a good job, Chief.
And we'll be back. Police Chief Jid Tinti, thank you. Deputy Chief Mike Bonse, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and lower the blood pressure.
Now. Thank you, guys.
And we'll be back in a few, listeners.
You're You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Many medicines used to treat colds and flu contain acetaminophen, a pain reliever and fever reducer found in hundreds of over-the-counter and prescription medicines. But taking too much or more than one medication containing acetaminophen per day can damage your liver. So always read the label and don't take acetaminophen if you drink 3 or more alcoholic drinks every day. To learn more, visit fda.gov/OTC pain info. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Food and Drug Administration.
There was this one time I went snorkeling in the Caribbean when I was a kid. It really just blew my mind. We saw the most beautiful corals. I remember thinking they were waving at us as they moved with the ocean. And then there were all these amazing fish. I'll never forget it. It completely changed the way I look at the ocean.
Most of us have a memory of being in nature we'll never forget. Let's protect the world's natural places so more memories can be made for generations to come. Visit worldwildlife.org.
Have you ever experienced a wish come true? For a child battling a critical illness, a wish come true can be a turning point. One song, one dance, one game, one adventure, one moment changes everything. Make-A-Wish needs your support to grant the wish of every eligible child. Visit wish.org now to help grant more life-changing wishes. Together, we can transform lives, one wish at a time.
Someone in your town, at your school, or where you work is suffering from Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. They're dealing with excruciating pain and days when they can't even get out of bed. Chances are someone you know has Crohn's or colitis. Someone like me. I'm Amy Brenneman, and I'm asking you to support the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America to help millions of us cope and to find cures. Visit ccfa.org today to learn more. Help someone you know get back to their lives at ccfa.org.
Hi, this is Jim Quigley, Supervisor of the Town of Ulster, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Visit their newest branch, conveniently located at the Ulster Commons Plaza in Lake Katrine. Experience the difference that local community banking offers with the convenience of another great location, easy access, plenty of parking, and a 24-hour ATM. Ulster Savings Bank, invested in community, invested in you. Member FDIC.
Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome back, listeners who have been with us this morning. Those just joining us for our last half hour, welcome. 331-9255 is our call-in number. Supervisor Fred Costello is alongside of me here in the studio. We had quite an active past hour, but it's always good to listen to the police chief from the city of Kingston and also his deputy. So for this last half hour, we have joining us our I guess you could still say new senator, even though we're into the month of May. Michelle Hinchy, good morning.
Good morning. Well, I'm still new. I still count myself as new.
You
4
are.
months. Long 4 months.
You've been active, though. I offered that compliment earlier in the show. Every event that I've been to, you've been there either at the same time or before I got there even. So good for you.
You hit the ground running, and I don't think you've stopped, have you?
No. We've got, there's a lot to do. We've got 5 counties, so a lot of places to be, but also a lot of work to do and a lot of help for the community. We just did a Legal Shred event where we brought Legal Shred we partnered with some credit unions, and we brought Legal Shred to Caro so people could shred their confidential documents, get them out of the house. We'll be doing more of those. So if anyone's interested in bringing it to their community, let us know. We'd be happy to do that and partner with you. And just lots to do. Our legislative session ends in June, so it's a sprint to the finish line now to make sure that we can get some of the important bills that we're championing passed. And making sure that we're helping as many people as possible. We've helped over 100 people get the unemployment money that they're owed already, being in office, amongst many other really hundreds of other constituent cases. And so it's been really, even though it's only been about 4 months, it feels like, we've been here forever with how much people are reaching out, which is great. That's what we're here for. And we've really been able to make a difference, it feels so far.
Perfect.
Interesting. Legal shred. First I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it's really kind of fun, actually. There's a big truck, and you dump all of your documents, whether it's credit card statements or old tax filings or whatever it may be, anything you don't want anymore, but you wouldn't want to put in a regular recycling bin. If you want it shredded, you put it in one of their little garbage bins, and it shoots up into the truck, and it shreds immediately. Kind of fun.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is this being done?
Well, we just did it last weekend in Caro in Greene County, but it's something. These are popular events. It's fun fact. So if there's Saugerties, if we're interested in doing one there, we'd love to, or anywhere else. It's something that for anyone listening, we would love to partner with people and do that, and many other events too. And I have to say, I wish I was there with you in person today, but we're up in Albany. It's part of our legislative session week. So hopefully next time I'll be able to be with you.
Yeah, we look forward to having you in the studio. So you made an announcement yesterday talking about the rescue funds, and that's going to be a big undertaking. I know Saugerties and the rest of the town's allocation is going to come through the state, and everyone is eagerly awaiting what that process might look like.
Yeah, we are too.
I know it's a little bit frustrating. On our supervisor's call yesterday, that was a big topic, and it was interesting. Kingston, because of their status as an entitled community, gets their funding straight from the Treasury. So they have some recording obligations that I think we're not going to have to suffer because we're going to get it through the state, and I think the state's going to handle some of that for us. But they're going to get their monies directly over the next 2 years, which is kind of interesting.
So
the
rescue monies are going to come over a period of 2 years?
Mm-hmm. It appears so. And we're going to have to, all the towns, we're all going to have to go through a process. And Saugerties is a little bit unique because we share with our village, and we're obligated to give an allocation to them. But we're going to have to come up with, once we understand the arrangements of what these monies are eligible for, we're going to have to go through a scoring system to identify the projects that we hope to fund and kind of reach a consensus amongst the two governments and our residents of what the best ways to do that are. And obviously we want to do things that will represent investments and not use the money in one-time ways where there won't be any long-term economic benefit for it.
Right. What is that? Actually, question for you. What is that process? You explained it a little bit just now, but what does that process look like? How are you all kind of determining what those projects are going to look like, or at least those buckets of interest areas?
Yeah, so as we review the eligibility, it's clear that water and sewer infrastructure is one of the things that we can spend money on. We can recapture costs associated with losses in revenue or things that we have spent to secure the building and make it safer. And it's clear also that there's potentially mechanical upgrades that we can incorporate that would make sure the air inside public buildings is clean and safe. So as we're becoming aware of the opportunities on how to spend the money, I think so far we've talked amongst the town and village, at least the mayor and I have, about potentially sharing revenue and making infrastructure improvements because the town and the village have a close relationship with regard to public water system, and there are things that we would like to do that we can't afford to do, but this funding might enable us to do some of those things. So and then we'll put out options, I think. We'll develop a wish list, so to speak, of things that we would like to do, and then score those and make a determination between the town and the village, and then the town exclusively for the monies they're allocated our way, about things that we might want to do, and then share that with the public and try to get a sense of if we're on the right track or not and have a consensus for how this might be useful. Obviously, expanding internet service is something we all talk about and we know there's a need for, and we might be able to set up a pool of money that will help enable some of the most rural residents tap into getting Spectrum service at their homes, too. That's another priority, yeah. And I think the other thing is that beyond partnering with the village, I think we might want to partner. I know the county has shared some of the same priorities, and I'm sure that the state will have some of those same priorities. So to the degree that we might take some of those monies and pool them across those legislative bodies, we might be able to achieve bigger goals. And I think the internet is the one where we might be able to use the money more wisely if we pool it together.
That's what I was going to mention. I think that's great. I talk about internet access all the time and every chance I get because it is just so critical. And one thing, I think we've talked about it on this show, but one thing we did get funding for in the state budget was accurate household level mapping to really know where those gaps are. We know some of them, but the mapping will also cover speed and some affordability. And so it could be good to get, hopefully, this is something that doesn't take forever to do. And that's now kind of what we're trying to monitor from a legislative side. We don't control when that money is spent and when those studies happen, but we can monitor it and push for it. But so hopefully those can happen sooner than later. And then if we have that data, it would allow you all to, instead of having to do that work yourselves, to use that information and then help the build out.
Yeah, that would be a useful resource for folks that sit in chairs like I do, because Spectrum will share that data, but it's proprietary, so they make you sign a non-disclosure agreement to have access to it, which kind of defeats the purpose of having it, because now you know it, but you're not allowed to use it as a resource and share it with people who might be able to help you fill those gaps. So it's having that data developed independently of providers and having it being a resource to help us target where we can make improvements is going to be a tremendous resource.
It's crazy how Spectrum does that. I mean, how all of them do that, but that's just such a crazy operation.
Yeah, it's it's right. From our perspective, it's counter to trying to help our residents. And from their perspective, they're trying to not help their competitors go into markets where they're not quite as strong as they maybe would like to be. And but it's problematic. We get calls on a regular basis about from residents who are struggling to get reliable connections. And quite frankly, at this point, especially after COVID, it's not an option. Those reliable internet and fast internet connections are as vital as the road that we drive to the store on.
Absolutely. It's critical infrastructure. And, we actually, two of my colleagues just introduced a bill. I'm sure, you've all heard me talk about how broadband is effectively a utility at this point and considered one. My colleague, Senator Sean Ryan, actually just introduced a bill that would regulate broadband as a utility, citing some specific pieces that would allow them to do that. It's kind of smart, and so we'll see if that gets any traction. Of course, anything that makes broadband more accessible and more affordable is something I'm on board with.
Yeah.
But right now, to your point, I mean, these companies are protecting their bottom line, and that's, as companies, what they should do and what they're meant to do, but it doesn't help the residents. It doesn't help people get access to the things that we need and are expected to have.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that there is a lot of room for some type of initiative like that where you acknowledge the importance of broadband as a utility and that there's a regulatory body that kind of advocates for the expansion of it and the minimum standards that we all know are needed. So I think that's a long time overdue. And I imagine New York is in the front of that. I suspect that other states haven't even gotten quite as far as we have yet.
Right. I think everyone's scrambling with it, but I do think that we are ahead in that. And so as more develops on that, I'll make sure to keep you posted.
Yeah, we're excited about that. It's interesting. There's so many parallels to the build out of the wired electricity distribution network and the wired copper telephone network that happened many, many, many years ago. We take for granted those, not just the physical infrastructure, but the legislative infrastructure that makes those widely distributed and available even to rural farms in the middle part of the country. But that was a big undertaking, and broadband has not gotten that level of support yet, and it's certainly needed.
It is. I think you're right. You know, it was a luxury, kind of considered a luxury for some reason before, and it's been this very fast-growing necessity. But to your point, you know, if you were living without it, you know that your life is significantly more difficult without it. And if you're still dealing with dial-up when people we're so used to having things instantly and on demand now. And if you think back to, I mean, I just remember sitting trying to do my homework and research with dial-up internet. I mean, it was nearly impossible. It took many times over the amount of time it would take now. And so you think for students or people working at home, you know, it's just not possible.
Correct.
And, but it's been more considered a luxury. And I think, you know, we all know that you're right. I mean, COVID really made up people who do have it, who don't think about people who don't have it, realize that there is a big segment of people who don't and who are struggling, and that we've got to figure out a better solution here. We can't keep going in the direction that we are, because people in our communities, even if you live in suburban communities, I mean, if they just didn't wire the right side of the road, you know what I mean, to be able to extend it, or to your point, the farms and the more rural parts, I mean, just because someone chooses to live in a more rural community doesn't mean that they shouldn't have access to the same things that all of us are expected to have.
Absolutely. We kind of a funny story. A close friend of mine's in sales, and he lives in a part of Saugerties that does not have a reliable internet connection. So during COVID, his office was closed, so he would, in his car, park outside of areas that had reliable Wi-Fi connections and work from his car. It's kind of, it's sort of comical, but it's somewhat pathetic too.
When you stop and think what we've come through the past 13, 14 months, and how much we rely
on
not only internet service, but good quality internet service, especially with all the virtual meetings and everything that we've, that was the new norm, and a lot of those are going to continue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially, I mean, doctor's appointments with telehealth, banking, you know, there's so many things that are moving online that we think that we're advancing with technology, but we're leaving large swaths of people behind if we're not actually making sure that the infrastructure is there before we fully shift.
Yeah.
Good point.
Right on.
Lots to do.
Yeah, there's no opportunities to be bored, that's for sure.
So, Michelle, I just caught very, very briefly, and Lawrence mentioned this morning, on, I guess, Spectrum News last night, there was a blurb where you're going to introduce legislation for
prisoners in New York State Prison, if they've been in prison for more than 15 years, that they're going to be eligible for a parole hearing. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
I'm not introducing that. That legislation is already introduced by a colleague of mine.
Okay, but I saw they were in front of your office though with yesterday or whenever they shot it, and they were quoting you on it. So do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it's funny because it was a little bit of a miss.
But there was a bunch of people in front of your office though, right?
So there's a group of people who want me to co-sponsor the legislation. The legislation's already introduced.
Well, that's a ridiculous piece of legislation.
So this would make them just eligible for a parole hearing. It's not an automatic ticket out of jail.
Right. So there's two bills. The first bill is elder parole, which if you have been in prison for, I believe, and again, it's not my legislation, so I have to confirm on the details, but I believe it's if you've been in prison for 15 years, when you turn 55, you are eligible for
55.
A lot of people have.
What happens if they're a violent? What happens if they're a violent felon though, or someone that murdered somebody?
They would be eligible for a hearing.
But they'd have to be at least 55 years of age.
Exactly. So they would have to.
Okay, I missed that.
I missed that too. So I'm glad that you elaborated on that. Who is the person that put that into legislation?
They have to be in prison for 15 years already. They will have served 15 years and then turn 55. And when they turn 55, they would be eligible
For a parole
to
hearing.
go in front of the parole board.
Okay. So the parole board would still have the right to say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know which who put that who put that bill into legislation? Do you remember what the who the politician was?
Can look that up for you. I believe the other legislation is Senator Rivera. This one, I believe, I can find that for you and let you know.
That's fine. I'm glad to
it's
hear
not-
that you weren't the one that put that into legislation, because I was pretty
I did not.
I was pretty perturbed when I came to work this morning thinking, we already have a big enough crime problem in New York as is.
Well, see, the way I took it, okay, and I missed it, so I'm very glad that
Yes.
Senator Hinchy
Thank you,
elaborated
Michelle.
on this, where let's say an 18 or a 19-year-old took someone's life, then got sentenced to 30 years, 50, whatever, and then was in there for 15 years. I missed the 55. The age
Right,
of
I missed the 55 too, so I'm glad that you elaborated on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, so there's two bills. So elder parole is the 55. There is a bill, and again, neither one that I have introduced. These are ones that my colleagues have put forward. There's another bill called fair and timely parole. That one I actually, again, because it's not my legislation, have a little. I can get you all the details for it, but that one, I believe, is if you've served 15, or no, when you're eligible for your first parole hearing, then you are
Conditionally released?
The onus is on the parole board to they're trying to because a lot of people were put in prison for drug offenses and got very long sentences.
Right, during the Rockefeller
And-
laws, right.
Right, and so I believe it's when you are eligible for your first parole hearing, you would then, the onus is really on the parole board to put up a reason why you shouldn't be paroled, why you shouldn't get out, and kind of have that second chance. But again, and that one is sponsored by Senator Rivera from the Bronx.
Well, good. I'm glad you elaborated on that. Thank you very
So
much.
the process is
You're
still
welcome.
the process is still there with the parole board.
Yeah, the parole board is always a part of it. It's not just kind of lifting the doors and saying...
And letting them run free. Gotcha.
Okay. Now I got a much clearer picture.
Yes, and I'm glad that you said that, because I was, as I was watching the news last night, and they were all in front of your office, I'm thinking to myself, we just had a shooting in Kingston Monday night, and now I see this on the news yesterday, and I'm like, God, is this really what we need right now? Like, it's bad enough that we don't have bail in the whole state. Now we're going to just let everybody out of jail, but that's good. I'm glad it's 55 and older, and maybe if you've been in prison for 20 or 30 years, maybe, you're 55. I mean,
And you're reformed.
You're kind of reformed, right? And she's right. Some of these people under drug laws were sentenced to a lot, like maybe he should have got 3 or 4 years. They got 10 or 12 years. And that, that was, we had these Rockefeller laws that were in effect. I think those laws are gone now, though, aren't they? They took away the Rockefeller Act, didn't they?
Right, but the sentences are still there.
The sentences are still there, okay.
Changed. Right, they didn't look back, and I don't believe that they looked back and said anyone who was, overcharged or over-sentenced had to break, right? So there's a lot of people who are still...
Right, and I also didn't hear the
dealing
55
with-
thing, so that makes more sense now.
Yeah, and two quick points on that. There's a lot of research that's been done that my colleagues have shared that say, obviously also people age much differently when you're in prison, right? So someone who's been in prison for 30 years and is now 55 is not necessarily the 55-year-old that we think of, who's biking running on our streets and hasn't been in prison. So there is a difference in how that impacts. And on the point that you've made too about the shootings in Kingston, there's a lot of work that we need to do to keep everyone in our community safe. And there is, some thought to be put about people who've experienced this and have been reformed, right? Have served their time, who got in young, have served their time, who've become kind of mentors in the prison system for younger people. There's a space to have them be able to come out and work in the community.
Right.
And to try to take people who are on, our streets in Kingston who are maybe looking at different avenues of things that they'd want to do, to be able to show them, there's other things to do.
Right. Not every person in prison is going to be a criminal when they get out. Everybody, probably half of them want to never go back there again and live a good life. Maybe they made a mistake when they were younger, and but they you go to that's why you go to jail, so you can think about what you did wrong, and then when you get out, not do it again. So
right. Exactly.
So let's So thank you for elaborating on that. We got a few more minutes. You guys got any questions?
We say thank you quickly. Michelle and her team have been strong allies in our efforts to persuade the DEC to augment the speedies permit that the DEP uses to have the dumping go into the Esopus Creek. Jesse was with us on Monday when we met with a consultant that we've brought on board, the town and the village, to help us write a narrative expressing why we think that our visual resources have been impaired by the dumps that happened since December. And he's always an insightful, valuable voice whenever we're together. So thank you for sending him.
Absolutely. No, I was sorry that I couldn't make that one myself, but I'm glad that he was there, and I'm really thankful for all of your leadership in this space to bring in outside experts, right, and to be looking at creative ways that we can really solve this problem. It's needed, and so anything that we can do, always count us at the table.
We know that. Thank you. I don't know if Jesse shared some of the conversation, but the individual we brought on was Harvey Flad, and he was instrumental in helping communities around the Finger Lakes describe the industrialization that would be caused by fracked natural gas development in that area, and how those visual impacts would change the character of the communities that have evolved into, higher education institutions and the wine country and the draw that they've kind of redefined themselves, and those communities are using as a foundation to come back. And, introducing this intense industrial use into those settings would change the character and nature of those communities. So some of those arguments are relevant in our efforts to get cleaner water in the Esopus Creek, and I think it's going to be an interesting and exciting perspective to share in this fight to motivate the DEC.
Absolutely. That's great. And, we're actually having another call with DEP shortly, so I'll make sure that we get all the details, and we'll circle up in things that we should talk to them about, too.
Yeah. It was kind of an interesting conversation, because in some ways I felt like they were talking about the current weather, because, obviously that matters, but until you memorialize it and articulate it, you almost can take it for granted. But, and Harvey understood that really well, and that was one of the reasons they were successful in making a persuasive argument about the impacts that type of industrialization might have had, and the negative impacts that would have for people going there to enjoy New York State wine, which is increasingly being recognized as an important resource to our country's wine. Yeah. I've never spent time out there, though.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm really interested to go.
And we're down to under our last minute. If you got any last minute you want to throw in there, feel free to, Michelle.
I would just like to say we're having our first virtual town hall on May 26th at 7 p.m. It will be live streamed to Facebook, on Facebook Live, via Zoom, and also by phone. For anyone who doesn't have Facebook or want to join Zoom, you can call in. And so if anyone is interested in getting the details to that or to signing up, you can call our office at 845-331-3810. We want to make sure that we are sharing all the information of the work, the stuff that we're working on, and that we're answering questions. And so we're having our first town hall on the 26th of May.
All righty. Well, Senator Michelle Hinchey, thank you very much for taking time out of what I'm sure is a very, very hectic day every day to join us here. And we look forward to having you back next month.
Thank you so much. Me too. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day. Fred Costello, Supervisor, Town of Saugerties, thank you. Lawrence Maxwell, thank you. And most importantly, listeners, thank you. Have an awesome day on this beautiful spring Wednesday day, and we'll be back right here next Wednesday.